Hey, what's up, everybody? BDF44 coming at you with another video. All right, Jalen Brunson had 41 points in Game 2, and the Mavericks took Game 2 from the Utah Jazz, uh, getting the split in their own home, headed back to Utah. All things considered, it's a great situation for the Dallas Mavericks. I feel wonderful about them. Even though I picked the Jazz to win this series in 6, Jazz got so many problems. They've had issues all year long. It's been a great wonder of the season that they've been able to maintain their playoff position, in my opinion. I don't know how they've done it. It seems like they've lost to every game they're supposed to win that I look up and see. Seems like they're losing to teams they ain't got no business losing to. They played against my team, one of the worst teams ever, the Lakers, and we beat them, twice? One game where they couldn't throw a rock in the ocean. They tossed up like 43s, made like 10 of them. And in another game where they just like literally just let us do whatever we wanted to do or something of that nature. And they're still in the 5th spot with a split in the first round. I don't know how that is the case. But I know if they don't get out of this round and they lose to a Luka-less Maverick team, somebody's getting fired, people getting traded. I think Donovan Mitchell, if I'm just looking at things, I think he would be happy either way. I think he would be happy if he stayed in Utah and they blew it up and or retooled and switched some things up. I think he'd be just fine if he were to relocate and start fresh. You know, Donovan Mitchell's one of those guys who seems like he's cool wherever he's at. He's made Utah his own. He seems to have embraced their culture and how they do things. He understands that they, are hungry. They're a hungry franchise that's been on the cusp of winning a championship, but just have not been able to capture one. And if they did capture one, it was not in recent memory. They don't have one in my lifetime. So, but they've been to the finals like 3 times. So it's one of those situations where Utah's proud. They're a good organization, and this particular build just isn't good enough, and they've retooled it and they've tweaked it around. But Rudy Gobert, Donovan Mitchell, that's just not a championship combination. It's just not. I don't know what is. I certainly believe that both of those players can be a part of championship situations, but I think when you have Rudy Gobert, who's eating up a 30-year cap, and he doesn't shoot. He's not particularly effective on the offensive end too much other than dunking here and there. You really, really have some holes in your lineup that other teams just don't have. Even though you give yourself this massive anchor, it's very difficult to build around that anchor properly because he needs so much because of his limitations. So it's like, I have yet to see the Utah Jazz really build a championship caliber team around him. Yeah, you can build a playoff team, but they need a lot of help in terms of free agency, and they haven't drafted particularly well. You know what I mean? So a lot of things have just not worked out in their favor, and I just think they've lacked a lot of athleticism at that 3 spot. They've always had shooting, but they're just lacking that athlete, that one, guy, that Jaylen Brown, Jalen Green, Zion Williamson, anybody who could just jump out the gym and just be stable at that 4 spot. That would help if they could find themselves just an extraordinary athlete, because that's all they're missing, man. Bogdanovich is a heck of a shooter. He can really, really play, but they need somebody wiggly up there that can guard those 4s, those 3s, those positionless players that they end up running into, that end up getting the best of them. You know what I mean? And with Rudy just not being able to contribute but so much in certain areas, it just leaves you at a disadvantage. And then your spacing is funny because of that. And it's just like the rest of the league doesn't have these issues. You know what I mean? That's what it really comes down to. So they're at a disadvantage. They have to muck up the game just about every game they play. I mean, it's just not that great, man. Mike Conley, not particularly athletic himself, even though he's really nice. Of a point guard, he's good. He's not the flavor of point guard that they need. I think Clarkson fits very well. Obviously, him and Donovan Mitchell can play with one another anywhere. And I think the Alexander Walker kid works, but they hardly ever use him. I haven't seen him on the floor. So it's just one of those situations where I'm just not in love with Utah's vision of their team. Um, it's easy to blame Snyder for not getting the most out of it, but it's just like, a lot of people envision how the Lakers situation has been in Frank Vogel. That's kind of how I envision what's going on there with with Quinn Snyder. It's just he hasn't had a whole lot to work with. And the roster's been funny the entire time, and he's gotten the most out of it. They get to the playoffs every year, don't they? I mean, it's just as far as they go. So I do think they get out of this round. I don't think Luka's gonna be able to drag this team back into the fold, even though they have tied up the series. But you got to think, like, if Utah didn't win this game and Luka wasn't a part of it, they let Jalen Brunson look like Derrick Rose out there or somebody. I mean, what happens when Luka comes back? Even half of Luka, in my mind, going into this as I was making my prediction, half of Luka shouldn't be able to beat Utah, right? If he's coming back into the series halfway through, let's say he comes back in game 3, I don't suspect that he should be able at half, at half mass, not being himself, being able to overcome a real actual playoff team. But Utah, I mean, if they can win without Luka Doncic, obviously they can win with him not being 100%, or maybe they can win another game and continue to extend this series without him. And if that's the case, you really need to blow it up, Utah. And I don't doubt they will, because they got Dwayne Wade in place now, and I just don't imagine D Wade is going to sit there and chill and watch this awkward fit continue. I just don't, not how D Wade operates. Not that I have seen him operate a franchise of his own, but just looking at his style of commentary, listening to him on TNT, and judging by what type of player he was, there is no way I expect Utah not to make changes, regardless of what happens in this series. To be honest, changes are coming. So that's what I want to say about that. It's a nice game going on right now. It's halftime of the Warriors Denver game, and Denver's putting up a good fight, but the Warriors are doing what Warriors do, man. They're at home and they have the momentum, and with every passing game, Clay gets in better and better shape. Steph gets in better and better shape, because these guys are working back from injury. And that does not bode well for the Denver Nuggets, who are not getting any healthier. I don't know what's going on with Jamal Murray, but I'd imagine he's going to stay in street clothes for the duration of this series. Same with Porter. Obviously, he's been ruled out for the playoffs. So they don't have enough. I'm not confused by the fact that Jokic is an MVP caliber player, clearly, and that he's great enough to meet the moment of the Splash Brothers. But if he doesn't have his brothers, then they're just going to drown him. It's going to be a pool party in a Splash Brothers situation, and that's going to be it. And so that's what I suspect will take place, regardless of what happens in this game. Denver's just outclassed unless Murray can come back and be his absolute self, which is not going to happen. So, yeah, consider that. And then, what was it? It was another game that took place earlier today, and trying to remember what it was. It has not stood out. Philly. Yes, Philly and Toronto. Okay, so that situation's even worse than Dallas, Utah, because at least Dallas can put up a fight. Toronto's not putting up a fight at all. I'm not encouraged by a whole lot, because even though you look up and say, oh, okay, OG Anunoby's coming back, he's getting healthier. They've been missing him, now he's back. Well, now they've lost a couple forwards in his stead, so it's like, okay, you got OG back, but you lose Barnes. You know what I mean? Thaddeus Young did play, but what is he able to give you when he's injured as well? Trent was able to give you something as well tonight, but he's playing injured as well. So it's like, you got to give the Toronto Raptors credit. Those guys kicked through their pain and played through it, but it's something to be said when guys are injured and you're in a playoff situation. that doesn't necessarily work in your favor because now you're being taken advantage of. Now they're being targeted, that kind of thing. So if a guy's not 100%, chances are fresher legs probably what you need to do. And it didn't look like Nick Nurse really dug into his bench as much as I thought he may have. Um, and that's the thing. It's like I just don't agree with the philosophy that you should go and shrink your bench just because you've reached the playoffs. I literally think it's the opposite. I think that depth is what will keep you in these series. It will help you sustain injury, and diversifying your lineup will help you prevent injury, given the fact that you're not leaning so much on those top 6 players. And while I understand the concept of having to match up with coaches who are shrinking their bench, you come in with your second and third unit and they're still playing their starters, the score is going to dictate that. I get it, but these guys are a lot more talented than I think these coaches are giving them credit. And you lean on a lot of these guys throughout the entire season to get you to the playoffs, and then you get to the playoffs and you don't give them any opportunities. Now, maybe fairness is not something that we need to be talking about when it comes to strategy in the playoffs, but it is something to be said for, again, keeping your players fresh. And I just don't think you can do that if you got your best guys playing 40 minutes a game in the first round. There's still a lot of basketball to play, assuming that you're going to be able to get far enough in the playoffs. So I just think depth will prevail. I look at the best teams in this league, and they either have a monster of an athlete who's just bigger and stronger than everybody else, or depth where they can go 10, 11 deep. And so teams that don't have either of that, I expect will be gone soon. That's just how I see these playoffs this year. So, yeah, as far as the Toronto Raptors, they don't have either. At this point, they are missing their depth. They don't have that extra crazy athlete, even though I do think Scotty Barnes is incredible. They don't have that person that's just going to step in and just drop 50 and demoralize the other team. They need to be able to do that as a committee. And while I definitely believe they can do that as a committee, not without all their horses, and definitely not against one of those super athletes, for which Joel Embiid definitely is. So that is not going to bode well for the Toronto Raptors. Scotty may come back soon enough. Maybe that helps him get a game. But at this point, you got to see that the Philadelphia 76ers are playing good ball to begin with. Never mind who they're going against. They're just playing good. You know what I mean? And it's hard to beat a team that doesn't turn the ball over. Now, I didn't look at their stats for the night, so I have to excuse myself and say I don't know how they did. But the point is, to the eye test, Philly looked like they were on a string tonight. You saw people like Danny Green and Tobias Harris and Shake Milton all contributing. And that's enough because you're going to get what you need out of Maxey. You know Joel is showing up. And James Harden has been playing great in these playoffs thus far. So all of the fears and concerns that people had about the Philadelphia 76ers, through 2 games, I haven't seen them, manifest, especially the ones about James Harden. We've talked a lot about what he could do wrong and how we were concerned he wasn't going to facilitate, how we were concerned he wasn't going to meet the defensive intensity. Well, in this game, I saw several defensive plays that James Harden made. I saw several situations where James Harden was unselfish in making sure other people got the ball to the betterment of the team. And people like George Niang were able to benefit from it, hitting shots and contributing as well. As long as the Philadelphia 76ers continue to play team basketball, Tyrese Maxey continues to play with the type of confidence that he's been playing with, Tobias Harris continues to find his shot, play within rhythm, and get what he gets within the flow of the game while continuing to contribute on the defensive end, I think the Philadelphia 76ers could probably get as far as the Eastern Conference Finals. And at this point, I don't see a whole lot standing in their way with injuries and all these different situations taking place in these playoffs. Different matchups that just look like they're kind of imbalanced from seeding to seeding. You just see a path for Philadelphia to really push on. So, yeah, it's tough, man. As I've been saying, you just see different matchups where you'll say, okay, Denver got it easy. Or rather, not Denver, Dallas got it easy. And Utah. Both of them do, really. When you consider who each other are, those are the 2 teams that teams would rather play in the Western Conference. If you were in these playoffs, you kind of want to play them. So the fact that they happen to see each other, couldn't it be better for them? So it is what it is. But that's the type of stuff I'm talking about. And you look over at the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Memphis Grizzlies, and you understand that they got a dogfight on their hands. And whoever gets out of that series at this point is just lucky to get out of it. So, Nets and Celtics, they don't have the same situation as Miami does going up against the Hawks. I mean, it's just, without Clint Capella, it's a different challenge. Now, how do I look at that? And just to further that conversation. Well, I think the teams that have been challenged right now, those that are going through the most difficult matchups are probably going to be better for it. What they're going to end up doing is have more intensity in the next series that the other team who hasn't been challenged will have to match. And for a team like Phoenix, who I can argue won't be tested to the Western Conference Finals, given the fact that they got the Jazz in the second round, or the Mavericks, depending on how this goes, with Luka possibly being hobbled, I just don't know if that bodes well for Phoenix in terms of going up against teams like Memphis, who've had to dog it out, like Golden State, who've had to see the MVP in the first round. It's something to be said for the type of intensity that you're going to have to go through leading up to the biggest moments. And, I've seen that movie before. Sometimes teams get an easy path, and then they run into a team that hasn't and get knocked off. And I'm worried about Phoenix in that regard. So, that path looks very easy to me. Just considering everything, man. These playoffs, I'm looking forward very much to that Minnesota-Memphis matchup. That is my favorite playoff matchup thus far in the Western Conference. In the East, I'd say it would be Celtics and Brooklyn. Although I think that series probably would have been best if it was seen later on in the playoffs. I think it's a little too early for those two teams to be matching up with each other. I think that's something the NBA may want to take a look at to try to see if they can shuffle it around to make sure two teams this good don't see each other this soon. But nevertheless, I love those two series, particularly the Timberwolves-Memphis matchup, because I'm looking at the Timberwolves and I realize their record just does not matter in these playoffs. Who they've been, all that stuff, it literally doesn't matter. All that matters is the team in front of them. And from man to man to man to man, looking at the matchups, it's pretty even. The style of players that Minnesota's throwing at, the star power that Minnesota possesses, the fact that the Memphis Grizzlies have been caught off guard in that first game and have already lost home court advantage. You saw opportunities where Karl Towns could kind of eat against those bigs, which you may not have thought you'd see an opportunity for. And so I expect with this Memphis series, what I do expect is Desmond Bane to pop off at any moment. And that's the difference. When you're dealing with the Memphis Grizzlies, one thing I've learned to understand is that you got all this going on with their defense, their good team defense. You got, Brooks now you have to deal with. You got these bench players like Conchar and the rookie Zaire Williams and all these different players they got all this going on, right? Job, all that. But then you have to understand that Desmond Baines is going to shoot threes. Desmond Baines is going to shoot threes all night long if you let him. He's like a buff Reggie Miller out there. And, it's one of those situations where I don't know if we've seen a proper simulation of what Memphis actually is in game one. I'm pretty certain we didn't. I don't expect, even though Steven Adams played poorly in that first game and you could see where that could continue, I think the truth of the matter is I don't really expect Steven Adams to play poorly every night. In fact, I expect Steven Adams to have a double-double in the next game and probably play very well. He's not old. He just looks old. He's actually in his late 20s, and there should be no reason why he doesn't bounce back strong from a very bad performance in that first game. So I expect that. Karl Towns ain't going to have it easy all series long. These are just little things I'm looking at, man. Tyus Jones, important player, someone else on that team as well that I want to consider, but my mind is going blank. Shake Milton's name keeps popping up, and that's not it. It's DeAnthony Melton.
DeAnthony Melton of this Memphis Grizzlies team. That's somebody I'm also expecting to play better in these, as time is given. And that's the thing about Memphis. Whatever you saw in the first game, you do understand that they can play many different styles. So the adjustments that their coach is going to make should allow for them to have different looks than what we've seen. And those different looks, I think, can give them an opportunity to have better things go on with Minnesota. At the end of the day, Minnesota can't play as many different ways as Memphis, is what I'm saying to you. Minnesota has a lot of nice players, defensive players, stuff like that. But they have some non-defensive players, and they have some non-team defensive principles, which we've talked about on this channel. So when they're Kobe sit down when what's his name? Pat Bev sits down, and they put certain lineups on the floor, there are going to be opportunities for Memphis to run up the score, go on 8-0 runs, 10-0 runs, 12-0 runs, depending on the type of lineups Minnesota puts on the floor. And that is an issue that Memphis doesn't have. No matter who's on the floor for Memphis, no matter what rotations they put, they have good team defensive schemes and concepts that they should be able to implement no matter who's on the floor. Next man up at all times with Memphis. And I just think that bodes very well as adjustments are made as this series progresses. So I still have faith in Memphis. I really do. I think Minnesota's going to continue to come at them with the same type of ways that they came in the first game. Anthony Edwards, the more efficient he is, the better. I think Malik Beasley being efficient from behind the arc also bodes extremely well. And that's what it's all about. If Minnesota doesn't fall in love with a three-point shot and stays efficient with whatever threes they taking good quality shots, the McDaniels and the Vanderbilts and the Beverleys are going to force turnovers. Okigis, they're going to help you get stops. The question is, can you just play good team defense when those guys aren't on the floor? That's all I'm saying. So, that matchup is super intriguing. Absolutely love that matchup. And so on and so forth, man. I would feel the same way about Memphis if Chris Paul didn't exist. Phoenix and New Orleans if Chris Paul didn't exist. Those matchups look the same way, except Chris Paul just annihilates all things. You just don't have a chance, Because even the Ayton-Valanciunas matchup, even though I don't really love it, I still see opportunities for Valanciunas to win some of those matchups some nights. He's going to get his boards. He's going to get his pound of flesh out of that kid. It's not always going to be like it was in Game 1, even though he got his numbers. We said and we talked about how it looked like Valanciunas did get pushed around. But he'll do some pushing, especially when this thing shifts back to New Orleans. He'll get some pushing going. That's why I don't believe this is going to be a sweep, even though Phoenix is so efficient closing out games. I do think New Orleans is going to grind out one. They have too many good quality defensive players to not get lucky somewhere in this series and scrape out a win. I think they're going to scrape one out of Phoenix. I just look at Alvarado and Jones and B.I., Larry, Nance, the way he's been playing, Valanciunas once again. I just see too many possibilities defensively, for them to attack Phoenix and at least get lucky one time. Maybe I'm rooting for them. That's why I'm giving them a game, because it doesn't look good. But I just want to see them scrounge out a victory. Just because the matchups do say that they should be able to do something against Phoenix here and there. So we'll see. So yeah, man, the Bucks in Chicago, I think that could potentially go south quickly. I just don't know where they're gonna find their support for Giannis in terms of like the weak side help and guarding him in the paint. I just don't know how they're gonna find that. As I've said, Vucevic for the Bulls, he just isn't the right flavor, as we talked about this morning. I like him as a player, but not for this team. They need somebody more defensive. They need somebody more athletic, etc., etc. You've already heard all that. But because I don't think they're going to find it. Giannis takes care of business. Middleton continues to shoot the way he's shooting. This series should be over in 4. Just gonna call it like it is. I had Chicago winning a game or 2, and they're good enough. They're good enough to scrounge out a game 2. DeMar DeRozan, I think, can win you 1 by himself. I can see him getting a 50-point game, being heroic. So, I'm not going to deviate from the idea that I don't think this is going to be a sweep. Because I trust Chicago has enough talent to make some good changes. Alex Caruso, those guys are going to play some good D. Kobe White, those guys can get a game out of this series for sure. But, as far as them really competing, doing something real, nah. Not at all, man. Milwaukee's on a mission, as I've told you guys. I just don't see it. I don't see it. Giannis is going to be able to eat repeatedly in the paint in this series. I agreed with the pundit. Somebody said it was like the most dominant 25 points you'll ever see. Totally agree. Some of the dunks he was doing looked like Shaq stuff out there. I mean, he is a different type of animal. And if you do not have something like him to match him, he's going to win. That's where we're at with Giannis. That's where we are with his progression. Same with Joel Embiid. We're just there. As to where in the past those guys have kind of hurt themselves in certain situations. Maybe Joel had injury issues. You look at him and say, oh, we can count on him not being around. Or with Giannis, oh, he can't shoot. Giannis is going to hurt the team as long as they run things through him. That stuff is over. Those two guys got their own destiny in their own hands as far as I can tell through these playoffs. It's up to them what happens to their teams. Because there's no matching up with those two at this point. That's what I'm here to tell you. It's just like when we realized LeBron was unstoppable. And it's up to him what he was going to do, and it's up to the league to try to find a way to beat him. You know what I mean? You got to build something to beat him. That's where we're at with Giannis. That's where we're at with Joel. If you don't build your team to beat those guys, you're not. You're putting together a good squad with really good players and great fundamentals and depth and principles, and you're still going to get beat because that's where we're at with those two. So that's my declaration in regards to those particular athletes. Those two, you better have something to match them. You better find something in the draft, something over the next couple of years. Each and every team better find you something. Because if you don't, they're going to hoard all the rings. This is Shaq all over again. So, I'm just putting it out there. The good thing is there's 2 of them. So, that should balance it out. But I'm telling you, I would not be surprised if those 2 people won the next 4 or 5 championship rings between the 2 of them. Would not shock me at all. So that's pretty much where I'm at, man. I love giving my thoughts on these playoffs. Unfortunately, my Lakers are not a part of it. If you guys follow me, I could talk about the Lakers right now, start a whole new conversation. But at the end of the day, it's kind of nice to not have a horse in the race sometimes. You never root for that. But once you get there, it's kind of easy going. I'm not involved. Okay. We're not shooting for anything. We don't like anybody, so I can root for everybody. Okay, I like the Pels. It's big Pels, hey. I can do whatever I want because at the end of the day, my Lakers, we're nowhere to be found. So, I don't have to be angry at any particular team for knocking us off. We knocked ourselves off. I've been listening to a lot of fans talk about, oh, the Suns, we hate the Suns. They were talking crap. What you hate the Suns for? They did what they're supposed to do. We beat ourselves. We never had an opportunity to defend ourselves against anybody in this era. You see what I'm saying? If we're going to be mad at anybody as Laker fans, be mad at our front office. That's our biggest antagonist right now. Be mad at LeBron James. That's our biggest antagonist right now. You know what I'm saying? It ain't the other team. So I can enjoy everybody right now, and I kind of enjoy that in a way. So that's what I got to say, man. I thank y'all for rocking with me. My name is BDF44, and I'm out.